Begin today the Gemara on Daf Yud Aleph, right at the beginning of the Yamod, Unkelos. So the Gemara was discussing the story with Antoninus and Rabbi. So now it brings similar the story with Unkelos. Unkelos bar Kleinimus. That's the girsa we have here. In Gittin, when it speaks about Unkelos, it says Klunikos. So some say it's the same person, some say it's not the same person. So Igayer, he became a ger. Shoder Kaiser Gundudere Moya Basrei. So the Caesar sent a group of soldiers after him to bring him. So what happened was, Mashchinu Bekroi, he drew them in by talking to them with psukim about Yiddishkeit. And Igayer, this group of soldiers stayed and they became Gedim as well. So Hadashad Gundudere Moya Chrine Basrei. So the Caesar sent another group of soldiers after him. And he warned them, don't talk to him, don't get into a discussion with him about Yiddishkeit so that the same shouldn't repeat itself. So when they were taking him and they were going, so he says to them, I just want to tell you a small matter, a small thing. These are now the titles the Gemara is going to give here. Is different levels of people that are in a position. So the one that's in the lower level serves the one that's in a higher level. So Nefyura, he holds a candle in front of Pifyura. Pifyura leduchse. Pifyura holds the candle for the one that's above him, which is the duchse. Duchse lahagmaina. The duchse holds the candle for the agmaina. And agmaina lekuma. And agmaina is the one that serves the king. Now, kaime, the king himself, mi nokat nure mekamei inchi. Would he hold a candle for just simple people? So Amri Lei, so they answered, Unkelos loy. No, of course not. So now Amaluhu, he said to them, HaKadosh Baruch Hu nakat nure kamei Yisrael. The Eibusher is the one that holds a candle of light in front of Yidden. The Chesiv, the Pasuk says, when Yidden come out of Mitzrayim, that Vashem hoylech lefneim yoymer v'goymer, Hashem goes in front of them and during the day, and that's with the Amud Ona, and then the Pasuk goes on to say that by night it's ba'amud eish lo'ilem, with a fire to illuminate in front of them. Igayer Kulu, they also all became Gedim. So the Caesar sent another group of soldiers, Abasrei, after him. And now this time, Amaluhu, he warned them, Loi tishto midi ba'dei. Do not talk one word with him. Not only not to discuss Yiddishkeit, but don't talk one word with them. Kinaktilai va'azli, when they grabbed him and they were taking him, Chaze mezusta demonacha pischa. Uncle sees the mezuzah that's on the door. Oisiv Yadei Allah, he put his hand on the mezuzah. And Vamalo, he says to the people that are taking him, my high, what is this on the door here? So Amrulay, they said to him, Emalanat, you tell us what this mezuzah is. So Amalo, he told them, the normal conduct in the world is, Melech Vasavadam Yeshim Bifnim, a king of flesh and blood, he sits inside. And his slaves are protecting him, they're standing outside. But Vilu HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by the Eibusher, it's the opposite. Avoda v'bafnim, his servants are on the inside, and V'hu mishamra mibachutz, and he guards them on the outside. Shenemar, as it says, Hashem yishmer tzeischa v'yecha me'atav adolam, Hashem protects you when you come in and you go out, and this is through the mezuzah. They heard this, Igayer. They also became Gedim. Asu la'isha shada basrei. After this happened 3 times, so the Caesar did not send to bring him back. That's it, he gave up on him. Another thing that was darshened, going back to what it was spoken about before regarding Rabbi and Antoninus. The Pasuk says, Vayem Hashem lo shnei goyim bevitneich, by Rivka when she's pregnant. So the Eibusher says that there are 2 nations that the twins that she's carrying. Amarav Yehuda Amarav al tikri goyim. You don't read it goyim ale geyim. It's read as Geim, which means great people. And who are these great people? Zeh Antoninus v'Rebbe. This refers to Antoninus and Rebbe, that they were great, and they were very rich. And Shalei Paskum al Shulchanam, it was never missing on their table, Loi chazeres, v'loi kishus, v'loi tznoin. Not lettuce, not cucumbers, and not radish. And that's Loi b'mois achama, whether it's in the summer, v'loi b'mois agshamim, or in the winter, even if it's a vegetable that's a season that it doesn't grow, but they were rich enough, they were always able to get it. What's the need for these 3 vegetables? Radish cuts the food for digestion. It cuts the food. The lettuce it turns over the food, another part of the digestion, Michael. And kishus marchev ma'ayin. The kishus, which is cucumbers or something similar to cucumbers, it widens the person's intestines. Gemara on the last point regarding the cucumbers, why are they called kishuan? Because it's bad for the person's body like a sword. And says the Gemara like Kashi, it's not a question that it depends if it's large or if it's small. The small ones are good, and that's the one that the Rebbe in Antoninus always had on their table. Okay, going back to the Mishnah, it mentioned the 2 days that are holidays that you're not allowed to do the business dealings with a guy in this time: Yom HaLeida, the day of the birth of the king, and the Yom HaMisa, and the day that he died, which is always celebrated by Goyim, and they mark it with also serving Avoda Zara. But then the Mishnah went on to say that this is Rav Meir's opinion. But Chachamim say that the day that the king dies, it depends. If it was a king that they burn his possessions, so nobody else should have any benefit of it, that's a day that they serve Avoda Zara, and that's a day that you can't do business dealings with a guy. But if they don't burn his possessions, then it's okay. Says the Gemara Meklal, from this it's understood that Rab Meir's opinion is doesn't make a difference if it's a day that the king died, and it's a king that they did burn his possessions or did not burn his possessions. It's a day that they celebrate this day and they serve Avoda Zara. So Alma, from this you see what's Rab Meir's opinion. Sreife lav chukihi. The burning of the king's possessions is not one of those customs that is a custom of Avoda Zara. So therefore he said it doesn't matter. Now on the other hand though, Miklal, from this we understand that Rabbanan Savri, what's Rabbanan's opinion, that Sreifa chukihi, that it's the burning of his possessions, which is one of those customs of Avoda Zara, and therefore Rabbanan say only if you burn the possessions, that's connected to Avoda Zara, then you shouldn't do business with a guy in connection to this date. But Vatanya, in a Braisa we learned, Seifrin ala Melochim, but Veloy Medarki HaAlmighty, that you're allowed to burn the possessions of a Yiddish king in order that nobody should use any of the items of this king. And it's not considered to be a way, Darki HaAlmighty, a way of the guy in which it's not allowed to follow it. Now, but if, according to the Rabbanan, as we just said, it is one of those customs of Avoda Zara, so anan hechisafina. How are we allowed to burn the possessions of a Yiddish king? Vod vaksiv, the pasuk says, that you're not allowed to follow in the ways and the customs of the goyim and their Avoda Zara. So Elo, therefore the Gemara says the pshat here is different. The kula alma sreife lav chukihi. This itself, the burning of the possessions of the king, that's not a custom of Avoda Zara. So why is this a point that the Chachamim are bringing up? Ela chashivusahi. If you burn the possessions of this king, it shows that this king is choshev, it shows on his prominence, and therefore they don't want anyone to have a no from it. And so the argument between Rab Meir and the Chachamim is as follows. Rab Meir says, it doesn't make a difference if it's a king that died and they celebrate the day of when he passed away or when he died. It doesn't make a difference if they burnt his possessions on that day or not. It's a day that they serve Avoda Zara, and therefore you can't do business with a guy then. However, Rabbanan Savri, Rabbanan's opinion is the day that a king dies, and it's a king that they burned his possessions, he's a choshev king. He's someone that is on a high stature, and therefore palchiba. So they serve Avoda Zara. But v'she'ein basreife, if they did not burn his possessions, solei chashiva, that means he's not so choshev in the eyes of the people, and v'le palchiba, they don't serve Avoda Zara. So the burning, they're not burning. The burning is not a custom of Avoda Zara. It just shows in the prominence of this king. And that's the machlekes, whether that matters over here regarding the result, whether they'll come to serve Avoda Zara. But this minig itself of burning possessions is not an inyan of Avoda Zara. Now, Gufa, going back to the statement itself, we said before, Seifran ala malachim, you can burn the possessions of a Yiddish king. Ve'im bo mishum darki ha'almighty. And there is no darki ha'almighty, that you're following the ways of God. Shanema, the pasuk says clearly that this was done by a Yiddish king. This is a pasuk that says by Tzidkiyahu HaMelech, B'shalim Tomos, you'll die in peace, and with the things that was burnt, like by your ancestors, will be by you as well. So you see that it says clearly in the pasuk that they burnt his possessions, and the point is not to have anah of any of the possessions of a king. Just like in the king's lifetime, you're not allowed to have hana and use the king's possessions. So the same, after he passes away, they burnt it, so no one should have any hana from it. And the Mefarshim say there's no issue of baltashchis because it's being done for the sake of the honor of the king. Ukesheim shesarfen ala malachim, just like you burn those possessions of a king, kach sarfen ala nasiim. So too regarding nasiim, which refers to anyone from the Sanhedrin that passed away, they would also burn his possessions that nobody should take it and use it for himself. Now, Oma hein sarfen ala malachim, what is burnt from the possessions of the king? Mitasan, their bed, ukleta shmisha, and the other things that the king personally used. Umay said there was a story, Shemeis Rabbi Gamliel Azakin, that Rabbi Gamliel Azakin, he passed away, and Vesaraf all of Unkel Isager, Shivim Mane Tsuri. Unkel Isager burnt 70 Mane Tsuri, which is a very expensive a very expensive coin. Asher makes a cheshbon here, this is a lot of money. And the Gemara now simply understands now that this means that he burnt the money that belonged to Rabbi Gamliel Azakin. So the Gemara asks him this, how could you say they burnt the money? But v'ha'amrit, you said, ma hein sarfin aleyen, what do they burn for when the king or a leader like Rabbi Gamliel passes away? Mitasan ekleta shmishan, the bed, something that they used, but not money. So the Gemara answers, Eima b'shivim monetzuri. He burnt the possessions of Rabbi Gamliel, which were in the value of 70 monetzuri. Something that he does not use personally, they do not burn. But Vatanya and Abraisa we learned, Oikrin ala malachim, that from the behemoths that belonged to a melech, so they would uproot, they would take out from the sinews in the bottom of his feet in order to take off from the bottom of the foot of these behemoths, the hooves of the behemoths, so it shouldn't be able to walk properly, and nobody else could use them. And there's no darkei amayri to do this. And there's also no tzar balachayim involved in this. It's done in a way that there shouldn't be tzar balachayim. And it's not baltashchis. It's being done for this purpose, that nobody should take from the king's flock and use for himself. But this is not something which the king personally used. This is just his possession, his animals. Amanav Paper, Sarah Papa explained what this Braisa is talking about is sus sharachav. It refers to the horse that the king personally was riding on this horse. That's where they would remove the bottom of his feet so nobody else should ride on the king's horse. Does this not apply by a behemoth tahira? You're saying that it's only by a horse, but we find by a behemoth tahira when you uproot, when you take off the bottom of its feet, and if this causes the animal to become a treifa, osir, then it's not allowed. Treifa is an animal that cannot live for 12 months, so if it causes it to be a treifa, it's not allowed. If it does not become a treifa by this mutter, then it is allowed. So this behemoth that belonged to the king, nobody's anyways allowed to have a no from it, but still the Braisa says it's a difference whether it becomes a treifa or not, and one of the pshatim is, because this is relevant for tsar balachayim, if it becomes a treifa, that means that it's painful for the animal, and it's not allowed to be done. What is ikur? That you uproot the bottom of his feet, that it will not become a treifa, so that is hamenashe parsiseo min arkuva olamata. You take off the hooves of the animal from the arkuva to below, and by human being it would be like from the ankle to below, but I don't think by animal you exactly have an ankle, but it's like from the lowest section of the foot of the animal to the bottom. That's what was removed. From the language of this Braisa, it says if it will be a treifa, it will not be a treifa. That is a term that's being used regarding a behemoth tahira. So, but behemoth tahira is not something that the king personally rides on. So why are we saying that they would do this after the king passed away? So Rav Papa explained, yeah, it is talking about a kosher animal. It's talking about a calf or a cow that was pulling his coach of the king, and therefore it is something that the king personally used. Going back to the Mishnah, it said, Yoim Tiglacha Zakonoi. Not these are holidays. This is not a holiday b'chlal, but this is for a person individually, the day that he shaves his beard. And the Mishnah went on to say, Ublerisai, and he cuts off Blerisai, which means a ponytail. So the Gemara has two ways of interpreting this Mishnah. Ibailo, the Shaila was asked, Hey Chikitane, how do you learn Pshat in the Mishnah? Do I say it means Yoim Tiglacha Zakonoi? That is the day that he shaves his beard, and on that same day, V'hanochas Blerisai, he leaves his ponytail. So it's one day speaking about. Or maybe the pshat of the Mishnah is it's 2 different days. Yom Teglacha Zekana is one day when he shaves his beard, and then another day, Avoda Zara, the day that he removes his ponytail. Tashmas, the Gemara brings a raya, the Braisa says, like the second way, the Tanya Tarvayu, it says in the Braisa both of these. There's one Yom Teglacha Zakane Va'anochas Blurisai. There's one day where he shaves his beard and he leaves his ponytail. And there's another day in the year, Yom Teglacha Zakane Ve'avoda Zara. He shaves his beard and he removes his ponytail as well. Okay, so it's two different days. Again, they're both Asr, right? Amar Rav Yehuda Mashmol. Rav Yehuda said on the name of Shmuel, after we had all the list of the different holidays that it said in the Mishnah, so Rav Yehuda Mashmol adds, Oid Acheres Yeshlem Beroimi. There's another Roman holiday, and this is Achas L'Shivim Shana. This is something they would do once in 70 years. What would they do? Mivi and Adam Shalem, they would bring a person that's healthy and whole, Umarkiv and Oisel Adam Chiger, and they would have him ride on the shoulders of a person that's lame. Malbishan Oisai, and Umalbishan Oisai, and they would dress this individual that's on the top, Big Day Adam Arishan, with the garments of Adam Arishan. This is the garments that it says there by Esav. He wore this garment, and then Rivka gave it to Yitzchak to wear. So they would put him on this garment, whether that means that garment itself or something similar to it. He would wear this, and also they would put on his head they had this skull or this head from Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. He was a Kohen Gadol and he was killed by the kingdom then, and because of his beauty they took like his head and they preserved it, and then this is the head that they had from Rabbi Shmuel, and they would put it on the head on this person that was on the top. But then they would hang on his neck Maskal Reish Zuze de Pisa. This gem, this precious gem, or some kind of gem, or a margolis, pearl, that weighed 200 zuz, something very unusual. And then they would cover the streets with this precious gem that's called inoch. We had it before in the Gemara. Carbuncle, I think Rashi touched it, some kind of a red ruby or something. And then they would announce in front of these people, that one was riding on the other, they would announce as follows: Sach kiri plaster. The calculation of the king is falsehood. Now, this refers to Yaakov. That what Yaakov said, that the Yidden are going to rule over the descendants of Esau, it's a lie. And they added Achua de Merana, the brother of our master, which is Esau. In other words, the brother of Esau, Yaakov. What he says, Zaifana. He's saying a lie. So in other words, they did this in order to demonstrate their power of the Roman Empire and that the Yidden are under their rulership. And they would announce this to say that what Yaakov said, that the Yidden are going to rule over them, is a lie. And then they would say, the Chami, whoever saw this, got to see, or the Lei Chami, if you didn't see it now, Lei Chami, you're not going to see it because it was only done once in 70 years. My ahani l'ramah, but Amusay, then they would say, what did it help to the one that did tricks? Yaakov Avinu, that Esav called him a Ramai, he took away the b'chayre, took away the brachas. And the one that says falsehood, how did his falsehood help him? But then they would conclude as follows: Vai l'dein kad yakum dein. That woe to the one when this will actually happen, like Yitzchak said in the bracha, k'shezek comes zeh neufel, that when Yaakov will get up and the Yidden will be zeichet to be stronger, then they will fall. That's how they would conclude. Now, regarding this language, the way they express this, Omer Rav Ashi hichshilon piyam l'rishayim, that the mouth of these Rishayim, they stumbled on what they said. Because if the language they would use is that Zaifana is the brother of our master, then the intention would be exactly like they said, that they're referring to Yaakov, the brother of their master, Esav, which is Zaifan, as they said. But what was the language that they said? That, out over here in Achua, the Marana Zaifana, the brother of our master is Zaifana. So you can read it as, since it says the word Zaifana right after the word Marana, you can read it as Marana Gufe Zaifana. That their master, Esav, he's the one that's falsehood. Zaifana, he's the one that's false. Okay, so this is another celebration, this holiday that they would make once in 70 years. So it's also another case where you're not allowed to do the business dealings with a guy in this time. So the Gemara explains, why does our Tana not mention this? It's because those that are annually, he counts the less of a choshata v'shata if it's not on an annual basis like a choshev. He doesn't count this kind of a holiday. Okay. Now the Gemara says, Hani Deremoy. All the holidays we mentioned till now was mentioned in the Mishnah. These are the Roman holidays. With the Parsoi Mai, what are the holidays of the Persians? Mutradi, Turiski, Muharnoki, Umuharim. Okay, those are the Persian holidays. Hani the Parsoi. So the Gemara says these are the Persian holidays. Udremoy, and of the Romans. The Bavloi Mai. What's the holiday of the Babylonians? Muharnoki, Vaknisidne, Vachanuni, and the Esa Ba'adar, and the 10th of Adar. Okay, so you have to know exactly what these holidays are to know the halacha that you have to stay away from doing business dealings with them at this time. Amar Rav Chanan bar Rav Chizde, Amar Rav, Amar Rav Chanan bar Rav, Amar Rav, Chamisha Bata Oivdei Kechavim. There are 5 places that are Bata Oivdei Kechavim, houses of worship of Avoda Zara. Kvuanein, and they're established in these places. And Elohein by Beis Baal beBavel, a place called Beis Baal, which is in Bavel, Beis Nevoy, which is Bekursi. It's a girsa we have here, or Beborset, which is another place in Bavel. Tar Asa shebemafag, and Tzrife shebeashkelon, and Nashra shebearavia. Those are the places that are established as houses of worship for Avoda Zara. Gasser Avdimi, when Avdimi came, they added Yirid shebe'ein bechi and Nadbucha shebe'akai. And Ikedomri, some say that it was Naspera shebe'akai. Or Ravdimi Nerda, Masni Ibcha, Ravdimi of Nerda had it the opposite, that it's Yirid Sheba'akai and Nadbucha Shebe'ein Bechi. These are the places. Now, Amalei Rav Chanan, but Rav Chizde. So, my Kvuanheng, what is the irrelevance of this? That you're saying that they're established places, so what's the Geya? Amalei, so he answered him, Hachi Amar Avua de Imech, this is what your grandfather, your mother's father explained. Kvuanheim, that these are established places of Avoda Zara, la'olam, forever. Tedira kulashata, constantly, a whole year, palchilu, they serve Avoda Zara there, and therefore you can't do any business dealings over there with this place. Nashmul said, B'chlal, regarding this whole halacha that we've been learning here, that you don't do business dealings with them 3 days before, and according to one opinion, 3 days after as well. So Shmuel says, but Bagoyla, in exile, the Isser is only on the day of the holiday of the Avoda Zara. And the Yom Edom Nami is up. So the Gemara now asks on this, but the Yom Edom Nami mi Aser, in exile, now when they were in Bavel, is it Aser even on the day of the holiday itself? Rav Yehuda allowed Rav Bruna to sell wine to the Goyim on the day of their holiday. Rav Gidl, and he allowed Rav Gidl Lizvuni Chitim b'Chag Sedetaya. He allowed Rav Gidl to sell wheat, and this was on the holiday of the merchants. It's the same with Rav Bruna. It was also on the holiday of the merchants, and this is a holiday, a time when they serve Avoda Zara, and he still allowed them even on the day of their holiday. And says the Gemara, Shani Chagisa the Taya, this holiday of these merchants is different, Deloy Kvia, that it's not something that's set, they don't celebrate it every single year, and therefore over here, there's no Isser even on the actual day of the holiday itself.